7 of our agenda, EM1.
EM1, yes. Okay.
I think we also take up concomitant with that RE18.
Right, both of these, the emergency ordinance and the resolution, are here as a result of a recent amendment to the Mark Wandel Traffic Safety Act. George Weissong, Assistant City Attorney, City of Miami. And in the particular statute, just as a brief history, there were several bills pending in the Florida legislature regarding the red light cameras. This particular language was not sent through committees or anything like that. It came by way of an amendment to the 226-page Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles bill. So it was inserted at the last moment. And of significant import and consequence to the city is that they changed the red light camera system to the extent that under the current system, the violator is given 3 choices when they run a red light. They pay the $158 fine, they send an affidavit saying I wasn't driving, someone else was driving, or they do nothing and it converted to a uniform traffic citation. And under the statute, if you sent the affidavit saying I wasn't driving, someone else was driving, and a uniform traffic citation was automatically sent to the subsequent person. Under this new amendment, you still have those choices. You can pay the $158 fine. You could say I wasn't driving, except that the new, instead of a UTC being issued, a uniform traffic citation, the driver will receive a notice of violation. So they'll have the opportunity to pay the $158 fine. The third option is to request a hearing at the local government. They converted that from the state courts to the cities, municipalities, and counties. And so the amendment requires us to designate, because we are taking over to a certain extent, we are taking over the hearings. The statute says the cities, counties, shall designate by resolution existing staff to serve as a clerk to the local hearing officer. So the resolution designates the hearing board's office to be the clerk. Now, that's a lot of responsibility. The city currently in court faces approximately 800 citations a month. Those are folks that have gone to the UTC stage. And if you take your ticket to court, in addition to paying the $158 fine, you're subject to $119 in court costs, bringing your total to $277. The city, under this new amendment, will also be able to charge a reasonable fee for the court costs. That is in the process of being determined. By the time we're up and running, we will have we will have a number in place so that then the violator will, if adjudicated guilty, have to pay the $158 plus the court costs to the city. And so the resolution is required by the statute. The emergency ordinance is a way of also indicating that we are in compliance with the statute. And we encourage your adoption of those, and I'll answer any questions if you have them.
All right.
Okay. Move it.
I just have a question.
Yeah, for discussion.
Let me see if there's a motion and a second.
I move it.
Second for discussion.
Second by Commissioner Broyle.
For discussion.
Okay. Let's Bench Jones go first.
Thank you. I just had like a couple questions. I understand, or at least from my briefings, we kind of understood why we needed to do it. And I understand that there's a 60-day period to request for the hearing. But I just have 2 things. One, the first thing is I just want to know, how soon before this becomes,
Right.
active. And then my question becomes, how do we communicate this message? Is this already ready to go on the website? Like, how does the public know about how to address the issue?
New changes, yes. And you issued something that I did not mention, is that under the previous statute, you simply had 30 days to respond. The legislature has extended that to 60 days. So how does the average citizen find out about this process? Our vendor, ATS, American Traffic Solutions, has a website that outlines this information. We have, I believe, information on the police website. And basically a notice letter is sent out to the violator. The notice letter includes 2 photographs of the violation and 1 photograph depicting the vehicle with the tag shown. And it also tells you the site to go to. You log in and you can watch the video of the driver driving through the intersection. And the statute comes into effect July 1st. The governor signed it, and so it will be in effect July 1st. Now, how will that impact the city? July 2nd, we won't have hearings because of those time frames. So if the violator runs the red light, we have something like 30 days to process the violation, which means that it's initially reviewed by the Arizona folks, the ATS. They determine whether or not it is a potential violation or not. That information is then sent to the police department, and a traffic infraction enforcement officer reviews the video and determines whether a violation occurred or not. That usually takes 20, maybe up to 30 days, we consider. So then, after that, the notice is sent out to the violator indicating that they have violated the statute. And so, best guess would be late August, early September by the time we start having hearings here at the City of Miami.
And then I'm assuming there's a website for this information now. Is that how it's going to be communicated to the public?
Yes, the ATS has that website. I don't know if the city's website has been updated.
I would assume that we would have to have it on ours, because if I got a city in the city, I would want to know.
Right.
I would go to the city first. So I would just say to the city manager, there needs to be something put in place to be able to properly communicate to the public how they're going to resolve it. So the second issue is a little bit more, I had more of an issue of concern about, which was the hearing process. It does not fully explain the technical requirements based upon what I'm reading here. So can you further elaborate on, is it going to be a notarized signature? Or like, what can we put in this language to make sure that it's, that it's clear what the individual needs to do to address the issue?
Okay.
Like there's no instructions on, how to go about notarizing the signature or any of
Right.
that.
Now, when the person, obviously, when the person receives the notice of violation, the city is bound by the fundamentals of due process, which means we have to provide them notice that they have violated something and an opportunity to be heard. And so that notice letter was carefully crafted. So the first thing that the potential violator will see is this notice letter, which has the explicit instructions of their choices and how to go about it. And then, like for example, if they wanted to say that it wasn't them driving, it was somebody else, there is an affidavit that they click on the website, and it generates this affidavit. So then they submit that affidavit to either us or to ATS. So the notice of violation has all the legal requirements that the person has to abide by, and if it is determined that legal notice was insufficient, then of course we would be subject to having our tickets thrown out.
I'm not saying that. I guess the thing, I just want to be clear that there's a presumption that the person automatically knows how to go about the process of executing an affidavit. I'm not sure as to whether or not we should somehow further define it in the language that we have in
I mean,
the ordinance.
my fear is that
It wouldn't be a major thing.
my fear is that most folks know that there's such a thing as an affidavit, and that in order for the affidavit to be properly executed, you sign it and you notarize it. My fear is that if we attempt to render advice to folks as to how to fill out an affidavit, we might, there might be complications related with that. I mean, I think the affidavit part of it is pretty much self-explanatory for most people. The only issue I could foresee happening is someone indicating that they don't have internet access, but there's libraries, there's things like that, and It is a pretty automated system. The various ticket defense lawyer firms have challenged issues like the notice, the procedures, and all that, and we've been able to prevail in every action related to those things. So we're confident that the notice is sufficient for the violators.
Right. Overall, I just have an overall issue with the red light camera issues, no matter what. So, but I'm just thinking why we do it. I understand that one of the main reasons, there's revenue coming into the city. As a matter of fact, I think we actually earned more this last term, correct, Mr. Manager? So, I just have some in general, some issues with the ordinance,
Sure.
But I just wanted to make sure that there was some clarity on those two items that I had a concern about.
Commissioner Ford.
Let me ask you a question. My understanding is, how long has this red light camera ticketing been taking place? 2, 3 years?
Well, for some cities, they went.
Oh, here in Miami-Dade.
In the city of Miami, I believe it's been.
Dade County, Miami-Dade County.
I think it's a little over 2 years.
Okay, my understanding is, because I paid 3 of them already, you received a notice. That notice gives you all the explanation, all the procedure. My understanding is, if this is approved by the commission, all we need to do is change the address where the complaint goes to. Instead of Miami-Dade County Court, it comes to us. Now, the question that I have is the procedure that's going to be utilized. I remember at one time, the city of Miami had their own judge. We can Winn-Dixie is today on 20th Street and 12th Avenue. There used to be a city court system in there. So I imagine the question is, what procedures are we going to utilize, and where do we locate this individual? Suggestion has come up that maybe we can use the stations north and south. That makes it a lot easier for the people to go to the station. Now, not everyone, especially in my district, have computers. So the one thing is, we have to make sure that they receive the notification the same way they do in Dade County. Now, my understanding, that has been challenged, and that challenge has not ruled against it, right?
Right, and even though it is a largely technologically driven system, we do send out first-class mail notices to everybody. They receive a notice in the mail, and they can reply using the mail system as well.
I've become an expert at it.
And Commissioner, back in 1977, they abolished the municipal courts, and there have been challenges as to these special magistrates, and perhaps I'm delving more into policy, but our suggestion would be, based on the experiences of other municipalities, that this would be the appropriate setting, because our understanding is that most people receive the tickets and they don't view the violation online, where they see themselves driving through. So when it's broadcast on these big monitors for everybody to see, and that's essentially how the procedure works, is that the special master reviews the notice that was sent out, and then they view the video. And whatever is seen on the video is what the special master determines.
Thank you. I'll let our attorneys in here on this side to come up with ideas.
Commissioner Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know when the rest of the commission first heard about this new law taking effect. I just read it for the first time when the agenda came out. Mr. Manager, how come we haven't received an update from our legislative liaison regarding this?
It should have been on his list of updates. I don't know.
In all fairness, I looked it up, and I think it was signed by the governor on June 12th. So I think his list came out beforehand. But still, he should be following up, and he should be giving us an update, because this June 12th was before the last commission meeting, and I think any one of us would have entertained what's it called? We haven't done it for a while, but when you request to speak on an item that's off the agenda, point of privilege. That's been done for a while. But I think any one of us would have appreciated it, because apparently this is pretty important. And now all of a sudden we have an emergency ordinance, and I usually don't, I'm not too fond of emergency ordinance, because it's like, it's like a gun to our head. So is there any reason why we haven't received an explanation or a follow-up regarding to something that it appears could be potentially important to the city?
You're correct. We should have informed each commissioner in advance of this emergency on this side.
Mr. City Attorney, do we have to approve this?
My position is that because it is mandatory language in the statute, you do have to approve it because here would be the fear. If we don't adopt it on or before July 1st, everybody who receives a violation after July 1st will say that the city has not complied with the statute and then challenge all of those tickets.
Mr. Manager, and the reason that I feel that our legislative liaison should be notifying the city or at least the commissioners and definitely you, and I don't know when he notified you, I'm not going to ask you on the record, but it's because, this is a short time span and realistically, and I know Mr. Weissman mentioned that there's about 800 appeals or tickets a month. Are they 800 appeals?
Well, the way I view it is they're uniform traffic citations. So you get the notice in the mail and you have to appear. They're original tickets, like running. So they're not technically appeals, but by appeal I mean you're not appealing under the current system. You just get the uniform traffic citation and you have to appear and fight it. And if you fail to appear, you can be found to have failed to appear. They can suspend your license and all that. Same sort of thing will happen here. You will get the notice violation. You can either pay or challenge it.
And what you're saying is that we are issuing 800 of these citations per month, more or less.
Actually, we're issuing
More, the 800 of
significantly.
appeals.
I would say that the 800 is approximately 10% of all the tickets that are issued. So 90% of the folks just pay the $158.
Right, and what I'm trying to establish is the 800 number, what exactly it is. So 800 appeals per month, more or less.
Right, 800 folks are appearing in court on a monthly basis. Now, part of that is because every rental car driver, for example, that runs a red light doesn't have the option of paying the $158. Because of the way that the old statute said, once you get that affidavit, it automatically became a UTC, Uniform Traffic Citation. So a lot of folks had no other choice but to go to court. So I presume that some of those numbers will come down based on that fact alone. But then again, we have a lot of folks that like to challenge tickets. So,
Mr. Manager, do we have the resources to actually handle that caseload? And that's one question. Do we have the resources? My second question is, do we have the expertise in our boards to handle these citations? Do we need to set up a new board?
Is that an attorney?
Yeah, but someone needs, listen, they're going to ask us to vote on this in a few minutes. Someone needs to answer these questions. I understand that he may not be an attorney, but someone has to answer these questions because the bottom line is, they're asking us to vote on this. And by the way, in an emergency manner, so we're going to vote on it. We'll wait 2 or 3 minutes, read it again, and vote on it again. So I think it's important.
That's why I asked the question, what's the procedures? I'm sure you guys worked on it.
Absolutely. Francisco Garcia, Planning and Zoning Director. Commissioners, we are prepared certainly to receive as many cases as come and dispense with them appropriately. And the system basically works like this. The Office of Hearing Boards, which happens to be under the Planning and Zoning Department, which is why I'm speaking with you about this, is prepared to receive the appeals. The procedure has already been established. And the special masters, of which the city has presently 5, who are all attorneys and therefore able to address these cases and hear these appeals, are on notice that should this item be approved, they will be charged with this additional duty. They are prepared to do so.
And we're talking, if it's approximately 800 a month, we're talking what? 4 weeks, so 200 per week. That's a big caseload. Unless he's, no?
They go pretty fast.
Yeah, have you ever been? These things happen really fast.
No, unlike Commissioner Gore,
Well, let me tell you, I have the experience. I get the letter, and I have 3 because my daughter was one of them, and the car's under my name. You get the letter, you say, oh my God, what is this? Let me go on the website. Well, I said, I didn't do this. You see the car? It's taken, and you can see the film also, where they took the red light. I mean, there's no question about it.
I'll tell you a funny story. Connecticut used to take a picture of the front of the car, and they would then mail the ticket home. Just think of the implication of that. The pictures of the drivers are very clear, but so are the pictures of the passengers. So a couple of husbands happen to have been in the car with somebody else, and that militated that they now only take the picture of the rear of the car.
So again,
So I bring that to bear.
okay, so Mr. Garcia, so you're saying that the hearing boards will be prepared. I see in the state legislation that it also stipulates code enforcement, but in our ordinance or emergency ordinance, there's no mention about code enforcement. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, sir, and that is an administrative decision of the Code Enforcement Board by its very nature. It's a deliberative body, whereas the special masters are officers who can more quickly dispense with these items on a case-to-case basis. So we thought the more efficient way to do it would be to assign it to the special masters.
And Mr. Commissioner, I just also wanted to say the amendment to the statute indicates that charter county, non-charter county, or municipality may use its currently appointed code enforcement board or special magistrate. So basically, this is the system that the Florida legislature set up, is that the code enforcement boards would take over the operation of the court system for these tickets. Except to the extent that if a person does not pay the $158, they don't send in the affidavit, they don't request a hearing, they will still get a UTC, and the courts will handle those limited cases. And just in case you were wondering, any appeals of these tickets, like let's say somebody comes to the city, they lose, they want to appeal it to the higher court, they don't go to the traffic court, they would go to the Circuit Court Appellate Division as a code enforcement case would.
And just to follow up on what you're saying, I understand it says the code enforcement or special magistrate. So realistically, it could be either one. The administration is requesting that we don't use the code enforcement board.
It would be very tough to have a large board handling these cases. One of the special masters at one of the meetings we had indicated that he handles the average red light camera. He said within 35 seconds. I think that's a little generous in his time consumption, but basically he says they don't take a very long time. They're maybe 5 minutes to hear the case because, as Commissioner Gord says, the video speaks volumes, and they just look to the video.
I don't have any further questions for that.
Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I'd like to include my discussion item as part of this item, because my discussion item had to do with yellow lights, and I used that opportunity to actually look into this program. Obviously, this is something different, and I echo Commissioner Carrero's sentiments, because other municipalities, including Doral, Aventura, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Tamarack, Palm Coast, started discussing this issue, according to media reports, as early as May 28th. That's a full month before we're discussing it here today. Of course, we waited till the last minute, and now it's before us on an emergency basis with scant analysis and scant ability for the public to be here and discuss this issue. I don't think there's many issues other than maybe crime where the public has been more vociferously oppositional to an issue than the red light cameras in the city of Miami. Now let me talk a little bit about the substance of this amendment, or this incorporation of the state law. From a due process perspective, under the current system, a person who challenges a red light camera ticket has a right to appear before a judge and use the rules of evidence, which is a powerful legal tool to defend himself. Under the proposed system, the person would appear, as was mentioned, before a hearing officer, and the rules of evidence do not apply. So that's a major tool that our citizens don't have to use to defend themselves. The hearing officers also are not required to receive any training. The only requirement is that they become members of the Florida Bar. So in theory, we could have first-year law students or first-year lawyers conducting these hearings. Our hearing officers work for the same entity that issues a ticket, which I think presents a conflict of interest, because you have the hearing officers trying to collect the money for the very entity that's paying their salary. The cost of appeal. This is a cost-shifting situation where now we are being told that we have to manage the 800 or 1,300, depending on who you believe, because the Miami-Dade report listed as 1,300 court appearances per month. You're listing it as 800 court appearances per month. Of course, there's no analysis as to what that's going to cost the city of Miami. And under the statute, it allows the fine to be increased to $408, something that I can tell you I'm not willing to support. So there's no analysis in the backup that talks about what is this going to cost, and I think the commissioner alluded to that. What is this going to cost the city of Miami? How are we going to pay for it? Are we going to be told later on that we have to increase our fines from $264 to $408? There's just no analysis on this issue. In addition, there's a $50 cancellation penalty if a person challenges a ticket then decides to cancel the hearing. As we said, there's been no discussion, there's been scant discussion about where these hearings will be held. It'll be an average of 65 court appearances a day. So if you think about a day, not 65 court appearances a week, 65 court appearances a day. So the volume of court appearances is tremendous. And I've heard nothing here that indicates to me that we're ready or prepared to deal with that. In addition, and this goes to my discussion item really more than this issue, because I think they're obviously connected, and that's why I wanted to incorporate it. In February 2008, the City Commission approved the red light camera program. We've talked about it many times, so this was approved before we arrived. In January 2011, the city installed 40 cameras at 19 intersections. Over the next 24 months, the administration quadrupled the size of the program, installing 153 cameras at 96 intersections. We now have more cameras than the next 6 largest cities in Florida combined. We have more cameras than New York City, which is 20 times larger than the city of Miami. On average, municipalities in Miami-Dade County with red light camera programs have cameras at 5 intersections. We have cameras at 96 intersections. Why do we have so many cameras on our streets? Some would say it's safety. Well, a recent report indicates that almost half of our cameras, 46%, failed to produce fewer accidents in 2012 than in 2011. The report also indicates that we installed cameras at 12 intersections that only had 1 accident in 2011. And we installed cameras at 10 intersections that had 0 accidents in 2011. So are we really installing cameras at the most dangerous intersections? Is the goal of this program really safety? To me, the answer is a resounding no. This is not about safety. This is about money. Over the last 2.5 years, the city administration has installed a camera on practically every street corner. That is wrong. It is abusive. And this legislation simply adds another layer of abuse. I urge all of my colleagues to vote no on this legislation. It's time to shut down this red light camera program. And if there's any doubt as to what our rights are as a city in terms of what we can do in terms of removing our cameras, we've looked over the agreements, and it says, and I quote, without invalidating the contract, the city reserves and shall have the right from time to time to make such increases, decreases, or any other changes in the character or quantity of the work as may be considered necessary or desirable, including but not limited to the addition or deletion of traffic intersections from the program. That's Article 24 of the contract. Changes in the quantity or character of the program shall be authorized only by change orders approved in advance and issued in accordance with the provisions and procedures of the contract in the city. Change orders shall not be required to add, delete, or modify the list of intersections at which the traffic infraction detector systems are installed. The city reserves the right to order changes which may result in additions to or reductions from the amount, type, or value of the work shown in the contract documents and which are within the general scope of the contract documents. That's Article 60. Where an active traffic infractor system has been removed from the program or the contract has been terminated before completion for any cause whatsoever, the contractor shall promptly remove contractors' traffic infraction detector systems and any other equipment or materials. If the contractor fails to do so, the city has the right to remove such equipment and supplies at the expense of the contractor. Now, there's no doubt that we have a contract with this entity, and there's no doubt that if we were going to install a camera at an intersection, these obviously Hialeah being one of them, recently discontinued their program. I think they paid a $150,000 fine. or settlement really. Doral, I think I just read an article yesterday that they are discontinuing or seeking to discontinue their program. And I think it's time for the city of Miami to do the same. I think our residents have spoken loudly, unanimously, if you ask me, and vociferously on this issue. And I think, we've had many difficult decisions that have had a fiscal impact that we've had to make. We're going to have many more because, as we've mentioned in this body, one of the issues is our crime rate, which has been up in the last 3 years, 6%. And, our chairman has made an impassioned plea to increase our police force by 100 police officers, which I support fully. But to make that a reality, we have to make tough choices, and we have to make smart choices, and we have to think outside of the box. So to me, this is about doing what's right for the citizens of the city of Miami on a host of different levels. I cannot support this legislation. I think it's time to end this program, and I hope to have the support of my colleagues in this. Thank you.
Well, let me say something, and I respect what my colleague to my right has to say, but let me talk, and I don't think I'll change his opinion, but I'd like to change anybody else that might consider what I'm about to say. When Chief Timoney was here, and Mr. Spence-Jones, I was concerned about the murder rate then, he brought to my attention that the city of Miami had the biggest traffic homicide fatality rate in the nation per capita. We also had the second highest traffic vehicular accident rate in the nation. And the data that I have seen, I'm not going to say at each intersection where we have a camera infinitum, demonstrates between a 25 to a 30% reduction in traffic fatalities and traffic accidents. I voted for this in 2008, and this is one of my most prideful votes, because this is not a populist vote to make by any stretch of the imagination. But the bottom line seems to me, and I equally have incurred one of these tickets in my family, and, when that person did it, I said, "Did you do it?" She goes, "Absolutely." And I can tell you that it has changed the way I drive. It has slowed the way I drive. I used to be a guy that used to look forward to the yellow light and try to zoom right through it. And now when I see the yellow light, I do exactly what the intention was, which is to brake. Because if I can brake, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So this was never, to me, about the revenue that we bring in, though the revenue will have its own implication come budget season, though the revenue will have an implication when it comes to talking about police.
Right.
What mostly concerned me was a chief of police addressing me when I wanted to talk to him about the homicide rate in Miami, and he told me the homicide rate that I need to concern myself with is the traffic homicide rate, telling me that we weren't number 3, number 10, number 11, we were number 1. Based on the data that I've seen, we are no longer number 1. We're not even in the top 5 in the nation any longer for traffic homicide. I do make that causal link between red light cameras and people respecting the law. Now, the other comment made is there's no due process. I got news for you. If a third-year law student cannot figure out due process for this issue, then he probably shouldn't get that graduation and probably then shouldn't pass the Florida bar. We all learn con law at first year in law school. We then have to take it to second year in law school. Due process is the fundamental foundation that even a contract, real estate, everyone must know constitutional law. I would suspect and hope that the people that we hire as our special masters would be people who understand and have done either code enforcement issues before, or maybe have an expertise to some degree in traffic issues or criminal law. Criminal lawyers, of course, are very good at constitutional law, but I don't take anything away from civil lawyers either, because they understand constitutional law very, very, very well. I've always made this my first job as an attorney. Well, my first job as a law clerk was for First City Court in New Orleans. First City Court in New Orleans was where we handled public drunkenness, traffic citations, all the things that the larger county court did not want to handle. Now, it was wrought with its own issues, but that is where we dealt with the minutia of the volume of issues. I've always wanted to bring back to the city of Miami a first city court. I think it'd be a wonderful thing to have, so long as we can tamp down any of the abuses associated therewith. I know it's been, I think, legislatively done away with, but if you want to have direct and available due process, that is best served here at City Hall. It is best served by somebody looking at that screen and saying, is that you in the car? Well, it looks like me, but I think it's a third person, a double. Well, how come you didn't fill out your affidavit? Well, I don't want to get that person in trouble. Do you happen to have a twin brother? I do. Okay, there's your due process argument right there. And that will be vetted out. But most of us don't have twin brothers. Most of us don't have doppelgangers. Everybody know what a doppelganger is? Direct image of ourselves. In theory, in this world, there's a direct opposite person of us, a doppelganger, somewhere in this world. So other than the fact you may have a twin or a triplet or a doppelganger, which I'm not sure is scientifically proven yet. I've met your doppelganger, by the way. I think he's been doing all this left hand and right hand turning for you. So
he's the one who got the tickets for me.
Right. I support this, and the only thing I would have liked, Mr. Manager, and I understand why this is an emergency, the only thing I would have liked would have been the paper that I've read that's been submitted by the administration that demonstrated the reduction in traffic accidents as a result of this program. Now, I don't know that every intersection demonstrates or doesn't demonstrate that particular reduction, but from a policymaker standpoint, I'm always going to vote for something that will, in a city that had the highest traffic homicide rate in the nation, do something to at least take aim at reducing the highest traffic homicide rate in the country. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yeah, let me do this. Let me open up a public hearing, and then we'll come back to the commission. So public hearing is now open on EM1. You're recognized for the record, Mr. Cruz.
Yes. Mariano Cruz, 1227, Northwest 26th Street. My issue had to do is I don't see any city residents or city taxpayers here that are going to be affected by this. So there was no, even me, I am not even a city taxpayer. I am a city resident. Not a taxpayer. I only pay garbage, solid waste fee. I even remember that when the red light camera was improved, I call it a green light, the money green, that's what it was. That was only me was here to speak about. On the other side, I got Alex Bravo, everybody got Miguel Díaz de la Portilla, Carlos Jimenez Jr., of American Traffic Solutions, had the high-paid lobbies. I was in Hialeah last June when Hialeah eliminated the red light program, and now Doral is eliminated. I used to go once a month to Carino's restaurant to have dinner there. I stopped going there because they got red lights in all 36 streets, Carino 36 and 84. And I told the guy, people, I won't be coming here. Now they're talking about eliminating the red light cameras. And that's it. The thing that the city got to do something is about the traffic violations in the neighborhood. Like the other day, I was involved in an accident about half a block from my home on 26th Street. I am driving east, June 24, Monday, at a quarter to 7. The sun was right in front of me. I didn't see it. Look, it was very slow. We made a stop on 13th Avenue, was slowly, with the light, the sunlight in my eyes. And there is a truck parked in the middle of the street. That's what they're doing there. They parking in the middle of the street, not caring about anybody. So at the last minute I saw it, I veered to the left. Lucky there was no car coming eastbound. I'm going westbound. And it hit me, the end of my car. I got no problem. Rescue came right away. The police people came right away. Even if I don't pay for their service, they came. But in conclusion, this should have been advertised. I don't know. I don't see the reason of an emergency ordinance there.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ortiz, you're recognized for the record.
Javier Ortiz, Fraternal Order Police President. We're in support of the red light cameras. However, we are not in support of having a code enforcement board making the decisions. I think it should be done by a special magistrate, not only as a law enforcement officer, but also a citizen, a resident here in the city of Miami. I know that if I get a red light ticket, I should be afforded that due process. And to have a code enforcement board, which, by the way, they don't even get compensated, but for them to be sitting there to hear 800 appeals a month, I think is irresponsible if this commission decides to put that burden on that board. And again, I believe it should be put in front of a special magistrate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public wishing to be heard on EM1? EM1, please step up. Hearing none, seeing none, coming back to the commission. Commissioner Suarez is recognized for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope my doppelganger is,
Doppelganger.
I hope he's in the Bahamas having a pina colada and reading a good book right now. Anyhow, what I was going to say is, look, I appreciate your sensitivity to, whether or not the red light cameras have, in fact, in some intersections, reduced traffic accidents. Obviously, I think that in a good portion of them, they have not. I think there's inconclusive evidence as to whether or not the red light camera program actually does reduce accidents. There's been some studies that show that it increases rear end crashes. And there's also other methods that I think the city hasn't really explored. And this goes to my discussion item, which was that other cities across the state were actually reducing the amount of time of yellow lights to increase the revenue that they were receiving. That's what prompted me to start looking into this program. And studies have shown that actually doing the exact opposite reduces a tremendous amount of accidents, increasing the duration of yellow lights. So that's something that the city can do. That all of studies, as far as the research that we've done, unanimously show that increasing the duration of yellow lights, possibly even combining it with yellow light counters, which actually count down, the amount of time that a driver has visibly before the red light is going to, before the light is going to change from yellow to red, would have a significant impact on all intersections. And people could know, how they have to slow down, at what rate they have to slow down to make sure that they are able to stop on time without creating a danger for themselves. So, the other issue is, there's a lot of people in this community and in this city that feel that this is an arbitrary and involuntary tax. The city of Miami generates obviously $4 million in revenue, but the citizens pay $10 million in fines because the city only gets 40% of. So the citizens are bearing the brunt of the cost of this program, and the city is getting a very minimal return. And I think that's why there's sometimes a disconnect with what the citizens are feeling in terms of what they're paying and what we as a city are realizing in terms of revenue. So you're absolutely right. I'm not going to change my mind on this, and I hope I can convince at least one or two of my colleagues to follow suit, because I think it is time to send a clear message to the residents of the city of Miami that we put their interests before any others. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Chairman,
may I? I'm sorry. Oh, you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you recognize Commissioner Sanchez. Then I'll go to the manager, then I'd like to comment on two issues that Commissioner Suarez said. So, but I'll take everybody ahead of me. Go ahead, Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple issues that actually that I kind of want to address. I think first of all that Commissioner Suarez obviously has really looked at this issue over and over again to really expound on it the way that he has, and actually provided me with a lot of clarity on why this thing wasn't feeling good to me. And I said from the very beginning when we talked about it and I asked my first two questions on the issue, I made it very clear that I've already had the issue with the red light cameras from day one. But regardless of that, I think one of the strongest arguments that I think he made, and this is a reality, is when he mentioned the fact of up to 65 per day that we would have to deal with here. And I agree with police and his comment about the special magistrate that should definitely be something that's separated. Code enforcement is already overloaded, and now to add this to and not only overloaded but also feel under-supported, not supported as much as they should be by the administration. So now to dump this on top of that, I think is a lot to ask for. Another very good point I think that Commissioner Suarez made, was, and this is the reality, is have we done any kind of analysis as to is there going to be a cost associated with doing this? And if Danny is saying yes, then I think he should put that on the record to the address it. But let me just go through my points and then you can address them. So I think it is important for us to understand what kind of impact it will have on the city, what kind of impact it will have on us financially. So I think that's important to understand. I agree with the chairman about the issue. I think the original discussions about the red light cameras was always centered around safety, and I do remember having a brief discussion about this early on before I left, but I know that I was not involved in voting on the item for, what red light cameras. I wasn't here. I believe that was in 2010. So we might have, with Tim, we talked about the issue of how we could reduce accidents. I just don't recall, and I also asked the administration if they could pull back up the discussions we had in 2008, because I don't recall voting on a camera system. I don't think that must have happened after I left 2010. So I wasn't a part of, even the analysis on whether or not we should do it or not. But I can say this, and it's important to say this, that most of the discussions that the administration has with me about the cameras is not really about safety. It's really about money. If anybody's saying something to me about it or briefing me on it in any kind of manner, they're not really talking to me about, well, Commissioner, we have, reduced the number of accidents. So I would like an answer on, this question as to whether or not we have reduced accidents, because you have Commissioner Suarez saying that it hasn't, and then you're saying that it has. So I think the administration should clear that up. We would like to know as a body what's true and what's not true. But the conversations since I've been back, have always been about with budget or with, I'm just being real, keeping it real, city administration, no, Commissioner, the red light cameras, are producing these amount of dollars. And so that's the reason for the support, not safety driving the message. So I want to be very clear. So it is about the money. The other issue and concern that I have is I understand that the reason why this emergency ordinance was put on was because it was passed in Tallahassee, and that we really had no choice, in the matter as to making a decision as to whether or not we needed to put something in place. So that I'd like the administration to answer the question for me. I mean, do we really have a choice in this matter as to whether or not, we have, and I see Kirk is here now, do we have a choice or an option to not act on this issue? I mean, are we going to be in some sort of violation, or is there going to be an issue for the city if we don't? And then last but not least, just on a personal level, I don't know who was the one that mentioned, it might have been Commissioner Suarez. As I said from day one, I've always had an issue with the red light camera. And not necessarily, the issue around the safety, because I understand where Mark is going with that, because I think that it is important if people are running lights and people are getting hurt, we should have that. But I do agree with Commissioner Suarez on the issue of the abuse of the cameras. And now, when he takes the item and he breaks it all the way down, and when I get a briefing from the administration and they're telling me, oh, Commissioner, we have increased, our revenue from these cameras, never is the other part of it communicated, well, there's additional cameras being put up. The viewpoint is, wow, and I'm saying to myself, wow, people are just really getting crazy with their driving. I'm not thinking that there's more cameras being added around the city. I'm just thinking that people are driving more recklessly. So I just think that the administration sometimes, I'm just going to say this, Johnny, I think that it's really important for all the commissioners that if Suarez didn't dig deeper into the issue, we would have been left with just the briefing that was given to us that didn't really look at all of the issues around it. I had no idea that we had increased the number of cameras, so that's why we had more revenue. You know what I mean? So, and I know in my community, the community that I serve, the complaints that I have received on the cameras, is that it does, there were a lot of complaints, and there are a lot of complaints in the areas in which I represent, that these cameras have become hardships for them. So, I want to say that I agree definitely with Commissioner Suarez, and I support him, in this issue, because I do think that some things do need to change on it. I just want to have clarity on the 3 questions that I asked on this issue. 1, what happens if we don't pass it? So if I can get an answer on that, I really would appreciate that before we go on to the next question. To the next person. 2, so that's 1. What happens if we don't pass this? The second part of it, what is the fiscal impact, Danny, on this issue as to whether or not And that's really it, those two. What is it? Oh no, and then also the safety. What is actually the actual numbers of reduction or the reduction in?
We'll answer all those questions.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a statement. Back in 2010, when Manager Magoya was here, he asked me to kind of take the lead
Yes.
with red light cameras, and at that point, I had the full support of the commission at that time. And I said that collect the revenues was secondary. What we needed to do was change behavior. Change the behavior of the people that are flagrantly and deliberately breaking the law. Those are the only people that are going to get tagged with a violation. And thank you, Commissioner Gore, for contributing to our general fund. But it's a race-neutral program. It just looks at the tag, and it gets the people that are violating the law willfully and flagrantly every day. It organizes the intersection. Has it changed behavior? I think that's the number one question we need to ask. Has it changed behavior? My observations, I haven't done a study or anything like that, but my observation is that it does, because I travel through these intersections that have the cameras every day, and I see people slowing down to stop at the cameras. Before, they would see the yellow light and hit the pedal and run through it, and it was chaos at the intersection. It was conga lines making left and violating the law. Secondary to that is the revenue that it generates. I think it's close to $3 million net to the city, which funds, I don't know how many.
The net is like 3.4 million.
Which funds ex-officers. And at that time, in 2010, I said, our goal is to have zero revenue. Because if we have zero revenue, it means that everyone is obeying the laws of the intersection, and there's not chaos there. And that was the goal. So we've put up more cameras at more intersections that bring more revenue. As people go through there and get ticketed, they're going to have less of an incentive to run through the intersections. So eventually, I think it'll diminish, but you'll have a safer intersection. Now, I've read many instances in the papers where the red light cameras have helped solve crimes. People that say, no, he ran the light, and it was the cop that hit me, and all those things are sorted out through the video of the cameras. And we have Officer Chief John is here that can talk a little bit about that.
Well, I want my questions answered first.
Yes, no, go ahead.
Before we go into, I'm sorry.
The first one, I guess, is a legal question.
The fiscal impact, is this going to have, if we're doing 65 per day, I mean, is there a fiscal impact? I'm not talking about how much money we would gain from the program, how much money we gain from the program, but what is the fiscal, has there been an analysis done on
Yes.
now, because this literally becomes a whole other system that we now have to operate.
Correct. So we sat and preliminarily looked at the cost of running such a program with the special magistrates and a couple of staff members to assist in getting the cases ready, et cetera, et cetera. The total cost all in would be around $900,000. Given the caseload, that means that per case, assuming about a 10% failure rate, meaning that you don't charge somebody anything, it would be about $85 per case. That's what you would have to charge. And that's lower, I think, than Aventura at 100 and the state at 122 or...
Yeah, the state is 119, and the statute allows us to charge the violator up to $250 for the cost. So it should be revenue neutral, I guess,
right.
to the
So
cities.
In theory, if we charge $85 per case, it would be revenue neutral. We would cover the cost. All right. Can I interject on that, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
So, first of all, none of this was included in our backup, correct? I understand it was not in the backup because it was done later. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, when you talk about revenue neutral, if we're getting a certain amount of revenue right now, and we're increasing the cost by $900,000, then the only way for it to be revenue neutral is to charge the $85 per case when you file the appeal. Increase the fee to the outlet. Right now, if you appeal it to the court, you got to pay $119. Right. So here would be $85. So what I'm saying, but I want everyone to understand that what we're talking about here is not only it's actually increasing the actual fine that the person would have to pay, and that's important. Yes, because that's the action that we would be taking here in effect. Not only would we be ratifying this program, but we would be increasing to our residents, we would be increasing the fee that they have to pay for an appeal and that would be lower than they have to pay to the current state. In other words, currently to the state, if they don't pay the $158 fine and they go to the state court system, they have to pay $119 above the $158 ticket.
Correct.
If they take it to the city in this system, they would pay the $158 fine and the $85 estimate if they lose. If they win, they don't pay nothing. Now I'm confused. I'm not sure how.
Mr. Chairman?
Might be trying to explain. It would have been nice if we got information before the fact.
Stop.
Can I
Let
discuss?
Farrell go. Let Commissioner Farrell go.
Thanks. I think when Danny mentioned as far as being revenue neutral, he said any additional cost to the
right.
city. There is no additional cost to the city because whenever someone appeals, we would charge them $85. If they would appeal in the old system, which is what the state now did this law to eliminate, they would then, when they appeal, be charged $119.
Right.
So now it's going to be $85. It will be revenue neutral to the city because the $85 that we're going to charge
It's
them
supposed to.
is going to.
Understood.
Yeah. So
Good.
our cost will be now.
That's what I mean.
Now, aside from that, I think this is where Commissioner Suarez was going is that no, it's not revenue neutral to the overall city because if we do not pass this, then the red light cameras generate approximately $3.4 million a year. Therefore, if this is not passed, then we would not receive $3.4 million a year, which again, it goes back to, are we doing this for money? Are we doing this for safety? Or what's the purpose of this? And I go back to what I said from the beginning. You know, Mr. Manager, that's why it's very important to have people, you know, the right persons in the right positions, because the first I saw this was when I first picked up the agenda. And as soon as I saw this item, I knew there was going to be issues. I knew I had issues. My first question was, and I knew what the arguments was going to be, revenue versus safety. Are there any safety analysis? Is there anything that stipulates that those red light cameras have reduced traffic accidents? And I don't mean in general, like in the city of Ohio or wherever, I mean here, in our local streets. You know, and there's no analysis, there's nothing. You know, and by the way, I mentioned, and I try to throw the white flag there a little bit to the administration saying that I understand the governor signed it, you know, June 12th, and I looked it up. However, the legislators did not pass this June 12th.
Of course.
They passed it way before for the governor's signature. So once again, this should have been addressed. If this is really important to the administration, this should have been addressed way back when. Not that we pick it up and seeing in an emergency ordinance in the agenda. It's not the right way of doing business.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Wait. Let me take over for a second. So there's a direct question out there. Is there analysis as to the safety of these cameras? If there is one, is it readily available? You recognize, whoever's going to talk to this issue is recognized for the record.
Rodolfo Llanes, Assistant Chief. There is analysis. It's not readily available right now from memory. The overall number is a 4% reduction in overall accidents, and the specific number is a 7% reduction as far as red light cameras are concerned. We're trying to scramble that. We have done that analysis before. We're trying to get the documents in order to provide it to you all. But there are ancillary benefits to the police departments for having the red light cameras. We have data mining of video. We can go back and look if we have a crime in the area, look for specific vehicles, look for direction of travel. I mean, it's not just, our benefit is not just the red light cameras and reducing traffic safety, reducing the amount of accidents. We do have a data set that we can look at to resolve other crimes. So that's...
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, you're right.
Follow-up question. And again, now it's just, you know, educating. I want to know more about this. So, do the cameras consistently run so you can pick up data, or do they only capture when a vehicle is running the red light?
The system runs consecutively. It's always running. The only time it takes a picture of the tag is when there is a violation, when the system is triggered. But we can observe a rolling video of the intersection all the time.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that. I was not aware of that. So when you talk about Big
identify the
Brother,
tag.
you really have Big Brother.
We
Wow, I
identify
was
the
not
tag
aware
of
of
the
that.
vehicle because it won't take a picture because, there is a video and there is still photos.
Right, but,
So the
you are
photos
filming,
taken.
you're filming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was not aware of that.
There's
Big brothers
two
all over the
cameras
world,
involved.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
I want to make sure Spence is done.
No, I wasn't, but,
So
Yeah,
let me
very
finish up with Spence.
I just wanted to be clear. So Danny, you were saying, so if we take on this responsibility, are you saying now it'd be about $900,000 for us to administer the program?
That is correct.
And that will come out of the $3 million?
No, Commissioner, no.
Go.
That would be, you would charge an additional fee of $85,
Mm-hmm.
and that $85 would cover that $900,000.
Okay, I got
So that the net to the city right now would stay the same.
you. Okay. But to the resident or the individual it doesn't even necessarily be a resident because the person could be.
Whoever it is has to pay $85. My argument was that whoever it is currently has to pay $119.
Wait, on that issue right there, correct me if I'm wrong, we had this brought up once before, and you did an analysis, Mr. Manager, where you said 70% of the people that pay the cameras are non-residents.
Yes.
That's correct.
Don't you think it'd be worth saying something like that right about now?
So that's clear my question.
Yes.
So, all right. So it doesn't have really any impact.
By the way, I've paid 4 of those tickets. 1 myself, 2 my wife, and 1 my son. So I'm kind of...
So you driving recklessly? Is that what you're telling me?
No, but I learned to stop at right turns in Miami Gardens and West Miami.
That's another point. We never implemented the right turns, which would have generated 10 times more money, but we said that doesn't solve any safety. It just brings in cash to the city, and we never implemented.
You're welcome for that, by the way.
I didn't
You're welcome for that.
Look,
I was the one that
I want to do this
asked that not
orderly.
be done.
I just thought when everybody says a resident pays, I think it'd be important to point out 70% of the payers are not residents. But I want to finish Spence's issue because then I'm going to go to board.
Mr. Chair, I only have 2 more. That's it.
What?
One, I do want to know what happens. I don't know if that's a Kirk question. If we do not pass this item, what happens then? I don't know if that's a question for you or for the administration. And then I guess lastly, we'll close out on. I guess you kind of. So I would like to see some. Not that I don't trust your memory. I've just learned to see it in writing. So if to give me any comfort on this issue, I would rather us have that data for us all to look at and then make a real decision on as to whether or not we want to, at least from my perspective, as to whether or not I want to move ahead based upon safety. So I don't know if that means we table it and we discuss it now and table it later on. I'm cool with that. But I would like to see it in writing. But sorry, Kirk.
Kirk Menendez, Intergovernmental Affairs, City of Miami. With regards to the implications of what the city does or doesn't do, that comes to a legal position. And
So, Mr. City Attorney, respond to Commissioner Spence Jones' question. This does not get passed. Do we have a valid red light camera program in the City of Miami?
I would say no, because it's mandatory in the statute that we have to pass this amendment. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Wait. Let me go to board. I know you're out there, but I'm trying to keep it systematic.
That really didn't answer my question, though. I'm just saying, because I was saying, what happens if we don't pass?
Of course.
You don't have a program.
I know we don't have a program, but is there, what happens to us at this point? The county now will count?
No. The city of Miami would have to shut down its program, and then we would have to litigate the issues of the contract with the vendor.
And the county and the state will pick them up.
You're recognized, Commissioner Board.
When I first came in January 10, there was a couple of issues that we had to deal with. One was the red light camera. At that time, that was a discussion item everywhere. And I was told the state approved this, and the state approved it in 2008. What we're approving today is the RFP that went out a long time ago. That was my understanding. A lot of questions we're asking, and one of the questions is, we asked the administration to come up with numbers. My understanding is the decision to place the cameras were according to the amount of accident that took place in each corner. At the same time, I think at the request of some of us, some additional cameras were placed because of criminal activities and will help the police to solve some of the crimes that takes place. At the same time, my understanding is this issue about the camera, Commissioner Suarez, I'll be only in favor or eliminating the camera.
Sorry?
I would be all in favor if we do it statewide. Because yes, we're eliminating the city of Miami, but outside the city of Miami, where they go, they're going to get hit. Number three, if the state legislature, who is the one that has this ordinance passed, if we don't approve it, they can adopt it and have it themselves. So we really have to analyze. Now, my question to you, administration, is this should have been in front of us before, and this should have been here with backup material, the questions that we asked. How many, what's the reductions of accidents that we've had in each place where we have? How many criminal activity has been solved thanks to the camera? At the same time, how many accidents have been solved? Because my understanding is if you have an accident with a red light or in a corner, if both witnesses, no, he took the red light, there's no one that can say if there's both witnesses, then it doesn't go anywhere. So I would like to postpone this for later on, and I would like to get that information from the administration. And I think an item like this, and I agree with the commissioners, the administration should have more material, because not only us, we understand this. We read it. We've been receiving, at least our knowledge, that we receive information from the police about the crimes that have been solved, how many accidents taking place, and what percentage of the people that get ticketed in the city of Miami are not within the city of Miami. They're not residents. Number two. Number three is, if you wanted people to avoid the law, we have it in code enforcement. How many people do whatever they want, and since we don't get penalized, they continue to do throwing away trash and doing all because they don't get penalized. And that's the way it is. I just wanted to bring those
Let me
points.
go to Suarez and I'll come back to
I'm going to yield to Commissioner Carrillo, and then I'll...
You're right.
I'm sorry, thank you. I see the mayor sitting here, and he's been here for the whole discussion. I would like to see what his point of view is with regards to the red light cameras and this issue that we're facing.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was here in 2008, and there was a very, very big controversy about the RFP, and went back, and the procurement director recommending one, and so finally the Commission did approve the program, which was not in place until 2010. Then the Commission, this Commission, approved 5-0, extending the contract for 10 years. Is that?
I'm stuck on 2008. I've been asking the administration, please show me. I would like to see the back up. You and I and Sarnoff were here in 2008.
Right.
Maybe I just, fell and bumped my head, but I don't remember discussing any contract. I would like the administration also to pull me 2008 because I don't recall this.
And that's fine, Commissioner. I yield to you, but can we move on to what we have now?
Yeah, but I just want to clear in terms of history. And I do remember when Manager Migoya was here, that Johnny Martinez, as Assistant City Manager, presented the item, and we moved forward. My understanding is that some of the additional cameras have been installed at the request of the police department in terms of high crime areas, and also that these cameras, and this is what I was told, were installed according to the number of accidents that occur in different areas. I was told, and I read the information, and I remember Chief Timoney coming up. I remember that Chief Timoney, and this is important, said that the most deadliest intersection in the state of Florida was US 1 and 17th Avenue for the fatalities that they have. And the most intersection with accidents in South Florida, the Tri-County area, was Northwest 7th Street and 37th Avenue. And because of that, cameras were placed in different areas, and then the police follow up. But there's been legislation that was approved by the other commission and this commission. There's also been several attempts at the state legislature to eliminate, and by the way, the county passed like 6 months ago a resolution asking municipalities to eliminate the right turn. This has never been done in the city of Miami. Now the legislator made it official, and this has never done in the city of Miami. My recollection of the last, I think it was several months ago, it was that 70%, like the manager said, of the people that got tickets were not city of Miami residents. We get a lot of complaint because people get tickets in West Miami, in North Miami, in Coral Gables, which by the way had the system way back installed before the city of Miami. So, Commissioner, I mean, we are in a dilemma now. I don't think that eliminating the system will make or break the budget of the city of Miami, but I do think that it is relevant to the discussion that we're going to have in terms of hiring more police officers.
So, in other words, you support this legislation?
I think that the state legislature has put the city and every city in a very difficult position because we have to do this in order to continue giving the due process to the resident. But I am very happy for what Danny has said, that the residents or the people that visit Miami will be paying more if they have to go to the county and to the court system, and will be paying less if the city of Miami has their own operation. It's about $30 different, but it's a relief. But this is not even a political decision. This is just legislative that we have to follow the state law.
I guess he supports it. Anyhow, thank you.
Well, Commissioner,
you support?
You support extending the contract. Is that correct?
No.
No, you did not.
No, I didn't vote on it. So look at the legislative history.
Then the background that we get is wrong.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's a variety of different, first of all, and I remember when we procured the contract, that I was the one that made the issue of eliminating the rights on red and also the left in the box, which are two of the infractions that create a tremendous amount of revenue for the cities, but are completely offensive to the residents of the city of Miami. So thank you. You can thank me for that one. There's two issues here as far as I'm concerned, and that's why I brought in my discussion item. There's the issue of the actual piece of legislation, which from my perspective, I cannot support because it was brought unnecessarily on an emergency basis, number one. We have cities as early as May 28th of this year discussing this issue. There was no backup. Not that I disagree with Mr. Alfonso's analysis, but the legislation allows us to go up to $408. So, if his analysis is wrong, it proves to be an undershoot, was never put in our backup for us to make the decision, then we could conceivably have to charge our citizens more than what the state charges. And the third is, there was no plan. There's been no plan presented to us as to how we're going to deal with this. If you were to take Mr. Wyson's 5 minutes per hearing kind of off-the-cuff analysis, if you're doing 65 court appearances a day, that's 5.5 continual hours per day of hearings. Okay, every single day. If we're doing it at City Hall, we have a commission meeting every 2 weeks. So when are we going to do it? After the commission meeting? Before the commission meeting? I mean, where are we going to find the 5.5 hours? There was no plan that accompanied this hastily brought ordinance. That's why I can't support the ordinance. Now, as far as the system itself, I mean, it's simple. Over the last 24 months, the size of the program has quadrupled. We have 153 cameras at 96 intersections. We have more cameras than the next 6 cities combined in the state of Florida. Combined. Not more than each of the next 6 cities. More of them combined. Okay, we have more cameras in New York City, which is 20 times larger than the city. And we have, on average, other cities in Miami-Dade County have cameras only at 5 intersections. So, I mean, the program is completely out of whack. All the data that we've looked at, and by the way, and I agree with Officer Yanis, there's a scant amount of data available, but all the data that we've looked at, and I'm not saying, Mr. Chairman, Because, you made a point, and it's a good point. I'm not saying that it hasn't reduced accidents at all intersections. That's not what I said. What I said was, from the data that we have, 46% of the intersections, it failed to produce accidents. And we put cameras at 12 intersections that only had one accident in 2011. One. And 10 cameras at intersections that had 0 accidents in 2011. So if
and interestingly enough, I want to say this to you at this time, because this is going to come up on an issue that's for a time certain. I know the administration's position and the manager's position would say on that issue, if it saves one life, isn't it worth it?
Yeah.
You have to ask the residents of the city of Miami.
But I just wanted to just even add on to what Commissioner Suarez is saying, and that's why I would prefer, before I vote on this issue, to definitely have something in writing from the officer, just so that I can see it, because are these numbers going to be skewed based upon the number of cameras we have now? Are you going to say that the percentage was increased only because now we don't have any accidents in certain intersections anymore, but we're now capturing the data in another place throughout the city. So that makes it appear to be like we're actually reducing numbers. You understand what I'm saying? So if I started off in 2010 with 20 cameras, right, then my percentage of individuals that were in an accident would be at a certain number, right? But if now I expand that to include 40 cameras, then the numbers are going to be off. Because now that's why I want to see the numbers. I would rather see the numbers in writing.
Apparently, Chief Giannis has the numbers.
Okay.
Armando Aguilar went to print the report at overall, since the inception of the program, accidents in the entire city have gone down 8.11%, and accidents at intersections where there are cameras, 10.8%. So there's a slight larger reduction in the red light camera intersections. I also want to bring a case that's pretty personal to us. If you all will remember, when the motorman was struck, the motorcycle officer was struck at 37th Avenue and Flagler Street, that the driver of the vehicle had said that there was a phantom vehicle that cut him off and he had to run into the officer. We were able to extract that video and show that that was not true, and we were able to charge him in that accident. So that's just one instance that's pretty personal to us.
And I can bring you one too. Coconut Grove, there was a shooting. They had the car go directly across US 1 and tracked it all the way into, I think it was Liberty City. So I know of another instance.
Why has Liberty City?
Well, I'm sorry, but
I'm messing with you.
okay. They went where they went, and they knew what car to look for.
It was the Miami Garden.
Right. So I'm aware of one incident of a shooting in Coconut Grove where they were trapped.
But I think the point is being brought is we should have had all this information here today, not only for us, because I'm aware of all the reports that I've read and that I've received. But I think the public needs to know, because let me tell you, I know a lot of people call and they're against it, but I get a lot of calls too that says keep them, especially senior citizens that are walking and crossing the streets all the time.
You know, there's an irony here, and I almost went on Google and said, what does the word irony mean? And I'll tell you, irony is, if you live and breathe and own property in the city of Miami, you'll pay taxes. It's just the way it is. That's not an irony. But you know what's ironic here? If you violate the law and you run a red light, something absolutely 100, maybe not 100%, 95% within your control, you're going to pay a fine. Now the 5% that may not be in your control, that's called due process. That's why you go in front of a magistrate and you say, my wife was giving birth. You could see her right there next to me, holding her belly. I'm just using a hypothetical. And that's why I ran the red light. And that, to me, is under the emergency doctrine, probably justification that a magistrate will hear. So the irony here is, and I'm going to tell you the story, Commissioner. I started getting the MPD alerts about 4 months ago. I happened to notice on 59th Street we had a shooting every 3 days.
You just love Liberty City then.
No, so I asked the chief, I said, why don't we just station a cop there? And he, of course, doesn't answer me directly. And I said, I'll make a bet with you. I'll make a bet with you for 2 weeks that there will be a shooting on 59th Street. So he goes, I'll take that bet. We had decided, it would be lunch. We would take each other to lunch. And literally speaking, there was no shooting there. And I learned that you never make with a bet with a man who can control his own destiny. And that's exactly what this is here. You control your own destiny by not running the red light. You will never be subject to the implications of this if you abide by, we care about pedestrians. We've talked about pedestrians. We care about pedestrians on Brickell Avenue. We took Brickell from the state because we have pedestrian problems. This is part of a piece of the puzzle to help slowing down traffic, to help pedestrians in the city of Miami. And the point is you don't know where every red light camera is. And that's the beauty of it. You don't know. So what you inherently do is you don't run red lights. That yellow light means something. And Commissioner, your argument for yellow lights were great, but it's done to the wrong juridic body. You've got to go in front of the county commission to suggest to them lengthening or shortening the time for a yellow light. It's just not our jurisdiction. So I understand everyone's position. I'm comfortable moving forward. So I'm going to call the question. All right, Madam City Attorney.
Did we get this up in writing from the city? I thought he was giving us a copy of it.
No, my suggestion was, what are we tabling to now? Get in the afternoon, and let's get all the information that we can in writing.
Because I know it might have to be now.
That's fine. So then we'll table EM1 and our E18. Okay, FR1. We'll hear FR1.
Is that being deferred, FR1?
Yeah, for the second.